Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting Propagandacast with me, Imperial Dan, your host. And today we're having for you a 1 vs 1 on Semois. Yes, indeed, it shall be Semois. And it shall no more be Market Garden days. Those days are over. Market Garden is over. Now it's more back to the sort of casual thing between Hürtgen, Holland, Belgium, and of course Normandy. Yes, a bit more excitement that way, and of course a bit more different. And today, of course, as well, Monday Novice Fight, episode 201. Nothing special about that bit. And of course, let's just briefly sketch up some more. What is so special about it? Again, we sort of have this sort of sectoring. Besides the regular sectors, there's sort of the larger ones where we have sort of the home sector, which is usually a bit more safe, but then again not entirely. Of course, there are essentially 3 points, which all enter into sort of the central sector, the main sector, the fight sector, where most of the fighting usually takes place. Usually right here in the center, and a sort of common tactic strategy is to sort of try and block off the other chap right here by these points. Usually these 2 points are less focused upon in such attempts, and they're usually also a bit harder. In particular, this point, for example, is a huge blind spot in most players, and in fact, by a clever chap, could probably be used rather well against any opponent. So that is of course nice, and unlike, for example, this spot where there's actually a building that can cover the area, there's nothing quite the same here. There's a small sort of towery thing here, but it doesn't quite achieve the same effect in my opinion. Plus there's a sort of heavy cover there, so you can't keep it occupied from there. Otherwise, the center part of the town, of course the town right in the center, is the main feature of the map. Church, cemetery, buildings, all that, rather lots of angles. And of course this cafe, which does have those 2 very blind angles right there in the sides. Of course that should be remembered. This building doesn't quite suffer from it. Plus it also has a much better coverage of the road from here. Something the same can be achieved with this building. Ahem. So then, let us go have a look at our opponents. In the northern corner, it shall be Zamroth. Zamroth sounds more like a magician. Zamroth the Magnificent. Zamroth the Wondrous. Zamroth, who we don't actually know. But he is here. Panzer Elite. Yes, indeed, it's awfully a lot of Panzer Elite as of late. But there you go. Panzer Elite. Part of the 17th SS, as they're sort of making their way through the night, scouting out the Allied positions, and they run into Sacredmesa of the 4th Infantry Division, who are themselves trying to sort of do something here, and then stumble into the 17th SS. Rather unfortunate, and a large fight shall ensue. And let us get right down to it. Kettenkraut, right, aho. Engineers setting up the usual barracks. Engineers getting ready as well. Team number 2, nothing unusual there. Some players might go for more engineers, some might go for a lot, then go for the weapon supports and then snipers. There's a tactic for that sort of that. But obviously, this is not what Sacredmesa is going for. He's going for the usual 2 engineers. Let's get some barracks up and then some riflemen to kick the Kraut's asses. There we go, barracks. And fun fact, if you peek right through the tent, you can actually see all the cuts inside there. Fun detail, actually. That is, of course, one of the hallmarks of Relic Entertainment. There's all those sorts of nice details here and there. Kettenkraut securing the northern point. Good. Panzer Grenadiers heading southwards. And, of course, one thing to note is these 2 points generally tend to be rather awfully harassed. In particular, the Axis, if your opponent's an American, they really love to do so, particularly if they can get away with riflemen, because they can do so swiftly. And of course you might be sort of busy down here, and then you're going to have to pull something up to actually react to this. So this, of course, is a wondrous thing to harass, and I wouldn't be surprised if Sacredmesa will be harassing Zamroth's fuel right there in the north. And of course this is really the only medium fuel right next there. There are some other points, but they have a much lower quantity. And of course, if this point gets cut off, then you're usually also going to get cut off from this one, unless you somehow manage to secure this one, which is pretty unlikely. So it also serves numerous purposes, in fact, not porpoises. For those that might be wondering about spelling errors, there's a difference. Panzer Grenadiers heading into the center. No Gewehr 43 so far. That's actually a pretty big deal. Usually you equip your Panzer Grenadiers with the Gewehr 43s to increase the rate of fire, make them a bit more dangerous towards riflemen, but sadly not. And we're seeing an engagement here between riflemen and Panzer Grenadiers. Panzer Grenadiers firing out from the church, except they can only get open one of the windows, and that is of course one of the odd features of the church. These windows aren't really too terribly useful, and you should be careful about stuffing anything but an MG inside, and even then I might be a bit careful about it. Personally, I don't really use the church. So there you go, Panzer Grenadiers here, and I'd really recommend getting those out of there. They're not really going to achieve much except keeping these riflemen occupied, and they're more occupied with these Panzer Grenadiers. More Panzer Grenadiers advancing. Could be they're charging the cover or moving up here. Riflemen doing their best. 5 against 9 Panzer Grenadiers. Awful lot of fire going down on these riflemen, and they are taking heavy losses. Now 1 Panzer Grenadier goes down, but the rest of the riflemen are forced into a full retreat. More riflemen are arriving, but this is not really looking too well, and this looks like the usual let's get lots of Panzer Grenadier strategy so far, which usually also means if you're seeing a lot of Panzer Grenadiers going really heavily for you, chances are he's also going to be rushing for armored cars. Just a quick hint, and of course if you're noticing that your opponent's going for a lot of riflemen, the thing you have to note, and we have only seen two teams so far, so of course it's about hard to judge, but let's get this over with anyways. If you're even within a certain amount of time, I can't of course sort of time it specifically, it can depend on a wide variety of factors, including attrition, of course, how much damage you actually manage to cause his riflemen. But if you don't see BARs or hear the thump of the mortar, the crack of the sniper, or just the report of the heavy machine gun, then you're probably going to have to expect some sort of armored car assault, and prepare for it in the sort of proper manner. Keep that in mind. It can make the difference between survival and getting in a Greyhound crashing down your troops. Riflemen are advancing. Panzer Grenadiers taking up positions in this building, although perhaps not the best troops for it, since they are heavily wounded and would be better off back and getting reinforced rather than they are right now. In which case, and if they have to retreat now, they will be rather exposed, since they have to do so through the front door, which is currently facing the American positions. And that's generally what you call very bad. We're seeing another frontal assault from the Americans. I'd perhaps rather recommend that he could also slip through here, but he looks like some engineers are. Riflemen are pushing onwards. 12 against all of these Panzer Grenadiers are taking slow losses, and these ones haven't even left the building. My goodness, that's not good at all. Riflemen doing their best against these Panzer Grenadiers, but so far they are being tied up. Engineers trying to do a bit of harassment up here in the north, but getting stopped by Panzer Grenadiers. And they perhaps managed to make their way. No, the Panzer Grenadiers continuing the hunt. More Panzer Grenadiers in the base. That's so far 6 Panzer Grenadier teams. That's quite excessive. In fact, might be a bit over the top, and he's certainly throwing away any sort of advantage he currently has by holding most of the map, if I'm not mistaken. There we go, some Panzer Grenadier. Oh, that's only 1. Rather unfortunate. What is the American commander doing? So far, nothing. Only 3 rifleman teams and some engineers. Seems to be a bit unsure of what to do. Should he get BAR? Should he get more riflemen? Should he get grenades? Should he get something? What shall he do? And more Panzer Grenadiers are now forced to retreat. Of course, there were only so many, and those chaps in the church weren't really doing anything. Again, the church is not really suitable for infantry. For some reason, all those nice windows right here don't really get used. I'm not entirely sure why. But usually you can rely on the broadside of a building, but not this church. I'm afraid not. Panzer Grenadiers advancing right out into the open, taking heavy fire from the riflemen. Oh dear, they are rather in exposed position. Riflemen able to get good shots on them. They will need to retreat. Heavy losses. Oh dear. Oh. Last one makes it out there, but these Panzer Grenadiers are waltzing right into a mess. Doing their best for the fatherland. But unless they want to be declared unfit for combat, they need to get the devil out of there. This is really a bad position to be in. They do simply not have the mass to fight this on. And of course, here is currently where Sacredmesa is really having the advantage. Why is that, you inquire? Well, the difference between the Panzer Elite and the American army is the Panzer Grenadiers aren't really made for slugging it out directly. They're not sort of the frontline fighters. They're more keen on firepower and mobility, and trying to dig them in like a solid frontline force is going to work against the West with the riflemen, of course. While they probably will be taking higher losses, at the same time they will be getting veterans as well. Plus, they are cheaper to reinforce. Panzer Grenadiers are notoriously expensive. Those are rather tough chaps. Some of the best, and they're of course much harder to replace, rather than some rifleman who's just been pulled out of boot camp and then given a rifle and pointed at Berlin. Very important difference. Kettenkrad pushing on there in the south, and the engineers are doing a quite nice job harassing behind enemy lines. Looks like we're seeing a Kampfgruppe company. We might be seeing a Panzer Elite command, which is the usual thing. And we're seeing a weapon support center, and we're seeing a mortar. That's an interesting choice by Sacredmesa. I rarely see a mortar nowadays, except when I use it, which doesn't always end up well. Panzer grenadiers holding the line. More are advancing, trying to take points and of course cut off the munitions, and these are high munitions points. Those are very valuable, but at the same time the Americans are pushing through here. Looks like the Americans are making for another frontal assault right at the Panzer grenadier lines, and still Mr. Zamroth has not chosen a single Gewehr 43. None of that. In fact, that's really peculiar. I mean, it really increases the firepower, and it's really usually what you see. Mortar rounds beginning to land. Ah, yes. Barbed wiring this point off. This is a good move. Why is this? Because, well, as you might have noticed, it forces the unit right into the line of fire off the heavy machine gun, and unless, of course, there's some troops that can cut wire, they will run into it. Mortar fire bombarding the Panzer grenadiers. They are good to take up cover, and are firing away at the riflemen, who are a lot more exposed. Some of them, in fact, a negative cover. Negative cover. Very bad, my friends. Very bad. It increases this damage and makes them easier to hit. Riflemen are continuing. Some are taking heavy losses. Though one chap firing from the church as well, figuring, well, I can help the fatherland too. Yes. Great job, Jürgen. Mortar rounds flying through there. Good show there. Not too good for those riflemen. They need to get out of there. Keeping up the pressure, keeping up their attrition, but in this case, didn't quite achieve it though. Engineers doing their best. It looks like this Kettenkrad might find itself with a rear full of machine gun bullets. So far though, no doctrinal choices yet. And again, let's just impart a little tip here on Monday Novice Fight. If you're fighting a Panzer Elite player and he's using a Kettenkrad, you can usually spot what doctrine he's gone, or what. How is that, you ask? By noticing this spot. If he's gone Luftwaffe, which is the usual ones, usually, you'll see it will have a camouflage pattern. If he's gone Tank Destroyer, you'll see a lot of repair kit, and if he's gone Scorched Earth, you'll see demolition stuff. Basically, yes, demolition stuff, highly advanced vernacular, whatever, bother. So of course that's a good thing to keep an eye out, and can help you and can provide you with an idea of what he's going. So far though, no doctrinal choices yet for either side. Riflemen getting ready. Trier send us up to sort of help with this sort of heavy infantry approach. Although a medic station to sort of again keep the rate of attrition down, ensure that your men aren't sort of dying, screaming in the streets, the fields, and cursing out your name because you couldn't be asked to get out a medic. So that of course is important, and we're seeing a mortar half-track now ready to bombard the American position again. It does also serve another attempt, because as you might have noticed, we're seeing BARs now. Good show, but he's rather clumping up his assaults, and that of course also makes, if he can stop them, then he can also hit them with the mortar half-track, and that will do quite a bit of damage. Of course, he can also do a bit of counter mortar fire on Sacredmesa's mortar. So quite a bit there, and the mortar half-track will be a bit more protected. The leichte Schützenpanzerwagen mit the mortar. Although I suspect this is sort of a lighter mortar. Opening up. Riflemen standing up there, and how shall this go? We cannot say. Riflemen advancing. Ever slowly. Mortar rounds from the mortar half-track going down. Panzer grenades retreating, and we're seeing an incendiary round. A rather incendiary idea. Riflemen, though, quite astonishingly, managed to avoid standing out, and then some of them decide to run right out in the middle of it. Absolutely brilliant. And looks like some of them caught on fire. Mortar rounds continue to fly through the air. From both sides, riflemen now are charging right out into the mess. Still no Gewehr 43 though for any of the Panzer Grenadiers. My goodness, what is he planning? Although it looks like he has finally abandoned the church, but the Panzer Grenadiers inside the building right there are taking fire from the mortar. Mortar so far scoring 3 kills. If it gets another one, it will gain veterans you want, and of course that's another thing to note. If you're the American fighting Panzer Grenadiers, of course Panzer Grenadiers fighting Americans, American troops level up a lot faster if they're fighting Panzer Grenadiers. 4 Panzer Grenadiers killed, and you basically have veterans you won right there. Very important thing and very helpful thing to note. Engineers hunting down these Panzer Grenadiers. Not looking good. And let us go have a look at Zamroth, the Panzer Elite player, who's now going for the Panzer Jäger command. Mortar half-track firing away, hoping to hit something. Actually, fun thing to note, but the 17th SS didn't actually have any armored half-tracks. Armored half-tracks were in fact pretty rare, and usually most Panzer divisions would have a very few that might be only able to equip perhaps a company of two with them, also a reconnaissance company. Rest would be in trucks, and some of them would be on bikes. At least one, in fact, one battalion, I believe, of the 17th, or was it a company? I can't remember quite away. But one of those, at least, were on bicycles, in fact, for the 17th SS. Either way, though, they would mostly have been on foot when they arrived on the field. But there you go. Panzer grenadiers advancing on the riflemen. Riflemen, though, are slightly exposed in a bad position, taking some losses, but so the Panzer Grenadiers, they've gained veterancy, but they need to get out of there. Offensive veterancy, good, increases the accuracy, increases the rate of fire, and some other small bits. Good move here from Sacredmesa, pushing on in these and laying down lots of mines. Sneaky Mesa. And now he's going for the infantry half-track. Quite interesting so far, no push really for armor, although we are seeing the Panzer Jäger command. Mortar rounds going down here, and of course already here, though, it's going to be harder to protect what your opponent is going to do, although again, always try to keep some things in mind, like he might go for armor, he might go for armor cars. What do I have to sort of protect myself against that? Always a rule of thumb, always at some stage expect you're going to be hit by armor, because if you're not, you're going to get a really nasty surprise. On the other hand, if it's not, you might still have a chance. Of course, you might only expend some resources on it, but it's not going to be a huge deal, and some units are rather omnidirectional, omni-useful. They can be used on more things against sort of armies designed, that units to handle more than one thing. It was, yes, I know, strange thing, they didn't follow, standard RTS thinking. Tanks should only be able to handle one thing. It would be silly for them to handle other things as well. And there we go, engineers coming under fire from the infantry half-track, the light armored. The armored personnel carrier opening up, getting one engineer down. It might be needing some repairs after hitting the mine, but at least the Panzer Grenadier soldiers took losses, but of course they can reinforce. Riflemen moving in, BARs blazing on the light infantry half-track. Oh dear, they're moving in. Getting suppressed, and oh dear, sticky bombs. And looks like we figured out what he's been saving all the munitions for. Assault rifle, Sturmgewehr. Absolutely nuts for them, but it's not moving in to assist the situation, and the infantry half-track, which has turned the wrong direction. Oh dear, sticky bomb going. No, it's a grenade on the Panzer Grenadiers. Oh my goodness, that was quite a lot with so little. And the infantry half-track is rather left behind. That's quite some losses. In fact, that might slowly be turning around now. He's gone really heavily for the riflemen, and of course that's not unusual, but it's a bit rare that you see so many upgrades being used on the riflemen this early. And again, will he be able to? Yes, this time. No, he did try, but it was too late. Mortar rounds flying from either side. Not looking too good. And now the reason that he stayed around for so long with the Panzer Grenadiers is rather biting him in the ass at the stage. Of course, he's stuck around too long rather than trying to secure himself a strong advantage. And now he's charging in at infantry out in the open with automatic weapons. Oh dear, that's just not an excusable. Grenade going off at the Panzer Grenadiers. Oh. Zamroth has absolutely just eliminated half his force of Panzer Grenadiers. 3 teams just vanished, basically. That's just disgraceful. Kettenkraut, though, apparently still surviving. Mortar half-tank immobilized, and now an easy target for the riflemen, opening up, hitting the rear. Mortar half-tank will not survive for long, I fear. Sonderkraftfahrzeug 226, no, though is ready. Leichte Panzerspielwagen with the 20mm auto cannon, Kampfwagenkanone, ready to do a bit of damage to those nasty armies. And we are seeing a supply yard up for the Americans. Could be just there to help with the sort of manpower upkeep, though of course it could have other plans. Airborne now dropping in, quite interesting. Panzer Grenadiers moving into support, but really again absolutely extraordinary heavy losses. Armored car moving through the north, airborne firing away as well. Someone hit a mine down there, some Panzer Grenadiers. Infantry after getting out of there, Panzer Grenadiers doing their best to support. And assault rifle equipped Panzer Grenadiers advancing. These veteran 2 riflemen still hanging about. Of course, riflemen with veteran 2 are rather tough. Opening up on them, riflemen firing away with glee. Panzer Grenadiers in this case are rather exposed to the riflemen right there. And an anti-tank on dropping in from the north, sneaky. Oh dear, he's sort of... Yes, this is a bit of an unfortunate thing. That's of course what happens when... And I do believe it's time for the mid-game analysis, but... when you sort of have your attention divided between several zones, and that's something you have to be careful. You haven't seen for me, you know. Sort of, right, I'm focused there, and then all of a sudden I've gotten some troops in the north, and of course that's also the great moment to sort of strike. If, for example, the grenade, if you're sort of aware of this, that you're fighting on several points, and you sort of have just the sliver of quite grasping all sides of it, then right, throw a grenade there, and then you can do some terrible damage. But in this case, of course, but of course, a counter thing to this is, of course, be careful with the light units like the armored car when in such cases, because they can easily be lost. So it'd rather been a more help if we've been using it here down south. But sadly it was not, and the armored car was lost. Manpower and fuel being flown, and this certainly fits in with this sort of novice Monday fight. But currently, what is the situation for the Panzer Elite? Well, after having gone from a strong position, they are rather throwing it away. Some rather terrible tactical decisions, not dodging grenades, running straight into BAR fire, and of course forgetting an armored car right in the north. It's really turning things against them, whereas now Sacredmesa, having, well, suffered somewhat, but still managed to keep up a solid game, continued, pushed on, is now slowly turning the tide. He has airborne now, which will certainly help him against any sort of armored surprises from Zamroth. And Zamroth doesn't really seem prepared for anything, and is again currently really suffering quite badly, but so is Panzer Grenadiers even more. These chaps need to move into support. There we go. Recoilless rifles have been prepared for the airborne. Panzer Grenadiers charging ahead, one down to a few men. The other one continuing its charge for the fatherland. Assault rifles blazing, or Sturmgewehr. The first modern assault rifle, in fact. But there wasn't really any modern before that, but there you go. Airborne taking quite some losses, blowing bit apart of the cemetery, though that will of course help in future advanced movement through here. And a sneaky move through the north, harassing the fuel point. Good move there from Sacredmesa, always harassing the fuel, although it's not going to do much, but still at the same time though. And let's just briefly pause to this. There's also a secondary faction, of course, population cap in this case. If he loses contact with this, of course he loses the population cap granted by it, but at the same time he also loses access to this one and any others. That's of course also something to note. You can not just to cut resources, but also the sort of amount of troops they can bring on the field. And in some cases, if they have a large battered force, they might suddenly find themselves unable to really reinforce a lot. That's also something to keep note of. But let's return to the fight. And again, Zamroth is floating a ridiculous amount of resources. This is bad. I mean, you might think, well, I'm saving up resources, but at the same time, you're really stacking things against yourself, because you will really need to give yourself the greatest advantage. Otherwise, you're leaving your troops to get overrun, getting focused down and overpowered, which really will cost you more in the long run. Grenade thrown in these Panzer Grenadiers. They try to get away, take heavy losses. Pulling back towards the infantry half-track rifle, now advancing. Panzer Grenadiers getting reinforced, but again, spend your resources unless you have something very specific in mind. Don't float them just because, well, I might need them for something. If you're saving them up, do so for a very specific target, or because, well, you're completely occupied with something else, or can't if you're the British and moving about your track. But again, really try your best to always ensure you're not floating about a lot of resources. Floating resources is undeniably bad. Panzer Grenadiers could move through here, so they can only one window can actually find way. Mortars now moving in, more riflemen advancing. This could end up very badly for Zamroth troops right here in the cemetery, and this might prove out to be their final resting place as well. Mortar rounds flying through the air, and there we go. Heavy losses. Incendiary grenades are prepared, but these Panzer Grenadiers need to retreat. They all need to get out of there. There we go. But the infantry half-track, though, is stuck between the gravestones. Panzer Grenadiers retreat. Oh dear, sticky bomb goes off on the... Oh dear, heavy losses. Another Panzer Grenadier team and an infantry half-track. Again, Zamroth, you're just throwing things away needlessly. 5 command points, and it looks like the grasp of the 17th SS is utterly collapsing. Assault heavy grenadiers are now charging forwards, doing their best. Lots of assault rifles, really thinking, well, I'm going to win with assault rifles. And now he's going for Scorched Earth, or is it Tech Strike? Oh dear, I can't really... No, it's Scorched Earth. Sector artillery is ready. Though I can't help but feel that might not be the thing he wants. But again, he needs to spend his resources. He needs to do something with it. Again, do not... If you're floating around this much resources, you need to really ask yourself, why am I floating this much? If it's because, well, I need this or that, fair enough. But on the other hand, if you've basically got only 3 infantry teams at this stage and you really got that many resources, that's the point. You actually have to say to yourself, bloody hell, I need to train some troops, get some vehicles, need to get some boots on the bloody ground. End of discussion. And now Sacredmesa is advancing. Airborne mortar, anti-tank gun. All the good stuff. And he's dropping in supply drops as well. Sneaky, sneaky. Panzer grenade securing here. Panzer grenade is moving through here. Rifleman moving in to stop that. Quite nicely, it looks like. These chaps are absolutely not reacting to that. More heavy grenadiers now getting ready. More of the assault chaps. More assault rifles. My goodness, looks like Zamroth conjured up some assault rifles. Perhaps that's his name. Zamroth, the Sturmgewehr Sorcerer. So far, that's not really working for him. And now he's charging in it. Of course, what? Oh dear, that's a mistake. He sort of threw at the infantry. But in those cases, when you're seeing a huge blob charging at you, the key is to sort of throw in the path so they run into the grenade. Not so you just basically throw them far away. In this case, this rather cost Sacredmesa and infantry team. Panzer grenadiers are getting ready. Sacredmesa sort of hanging this around in the center, but he's not really managing much. He's just standing about. You want to be active. I mean, he could really have been gaining some territory here, but sadly not. And looks like Zamroth is finally beginning to invest a lot in his resources and actual men, but needs to be a bit careful, and he needs to keep his troops at the front near the ones here, not the ones sort of here. You don't need to concentrate forces here. Concentrate your forces there. Not here, but there. Repeat after me. Not here, but there. Keep them at the front. At the front. There we go. Americans getting ready. More heavy riflemen getting... heavy grenadiers getting ready. Panzercheks now being ready as well. He's sort of perhaps expecting he might be seeing some armor by now. Not an entirely bad guess, although again some Americans will never leave the armor infantry stage and just go for airborne. In particular, airborne does rather suit the vehicle less sort of maneuver, since of course you can get recoilless rifles, you can drop in anti-tank guns. So that of course works. And riflemen charging right at the assault grenadiers. Grenades being flung. Oh dear, not going well. Incendiary grenades being flung at Liebetum. And the riflemen scorched, but somehow all surviving. Make a hurry dash forward as the SS Schwerer Sturmgrenadiere, which is basically what they call, not the SS, but still, as they advance. Good. Some advancing here, and booby traps going down, although again, at least he would have benefited from that if he'd chosen early. And again, that's one thing you want to be careful about, not waiting too long to get your doctrine, but at the same time you don't want to go too quickly either. Airborne, oh dear. And they take quite a lot beating from that booby trap. Sacredmesa's men will be swearing over that one, and they already are, away you. And it is in fact returned to him, who is also floating resources. Again, Monday novice fight. It's what to be expected. They will of course hopefully improve. And these Panzer grenadiers need to retreat. No, don't throw. Oh. They died, heroes as the fatherland, although the commander is not much of a hero. And booby trap set off. Oh dear, he's forgotten about it, and that's rather the key of the booby trap. It can really do a lot of damage if you forget about it. And these riflemen really take a burning flying through the air as the booby traps go off. They're rather nice, although they can be easily dodged if you are aware of them. That's sort of the caveat. If. Again, if. Just trying to sort of notice that there might be some slight clue there, but there's not. Engineers laying down mines there. Panzer grenadiers advancing through here, hoping for an envelopment. Engineers with flamethrowers taking quite a bit of fire, but they are able to return with actual fire. Mines being hit in the south. Panzer grenadiers taking some minor losses. Sacredmesa, though, still holds the AC. In fact, has a veterans, the 3 infantry teams. Some of the most dastardly, most evil riflemen ever made, and apparently Zamroth is making one of the mistakes that a lot of players do. At some stage, some players, when they're feeling they can't do anything, they'll just keep throwing waves of infantry at you without getting any sort of heavier support or any vehicles. And oh dear, hit a mine, and he didn't make it. That was tragic. And looks like the airborne are making ready for a counterattack. Recoilless rifles ready to blow up them if they can actually hit them. One Panzer grenade immediately goes down. Panzer grenades advancing. Airborne firing away as well. And the airborne are throwing a grenade. Incendiary grenades being returning. Exchange. Oh dear, another team lost. really not going well for Zamroth. Again, he's simply relying too much on two squishy units. And a heavy machine gun set up to cover this route, suppressing the Panzer grenades and forcing them into a retreat. Good show there by the heavy machine gun team. Firing away the water-cooled 30 caliber Browning water machine gun. No, not water machine gun. Oh, water machine gun. Yes, indeed. It's not a water park, Dane. It's a warfield. Although then again, a water machine gun would be pretty cool just to have. And riflemen getting hit. Again, it's the veteran C3 riflemen getting beaten up by those booby traps. But no, it's a water-cooled heavy machine gun. Oh dear. But I won't deny that a water machine gun would be pretty fun in a water fight. Assault grenades advancing, might be throwing an incendiary grenade, yes indeed, but they're standing right out in the front of a heavy machine gun. Although looks like they might have to pack up the fire burning. No, the Panzer grenadiers are getting gunned down right in front of it. Oh! Zamroth's unit preservation is terrible, deplorable, horrific, senseless, tragic. Airborne are advancing on the Panzer Grenadiers. And he does it again. He ought to be stripped of his command and sent to the Eastern Front. That's all I can say. And now we're seeing a lot of armored cars suddenly being prepared. Good show there. And what is this? An armored car finally gets ready from Zamroth again. Will this survive a bit longer, or will it go up in flames instantly like the previous one? Things are not looking good for the 17th SS, and let us just speed things up while he's now building a Panzer support command. Looks like movement is happening. Let us slow things down again. Armored car moving forwards, leading the charge as it does its reconnaissance. Airborne, oh dear, this will end up badly, and a booby trap goes off, which causes the airborne to hurry away. American armored car is ready. German one getting out. Oh dear, now it moves in and there's absolutely nothing that can stop it. It might as well be a tank because there's nothing the Panzer Grenadiers and the armored car can do. Absolutely nothing. That's quite sad. And let us speed things up again a bit while we wait for something to happen. Flashes from the Panzer Support Command. Something brilliant perhaps is planned. Mines get hit. What's the booby traps? No, it's... No, wait, let us slow down. It could be a sector artillery. Could it be? Let's just briefly have a look here. Yes, indeed, he's using sector artillery right down there, using it a bit, but he's not seem to do much. Flak feelings opening up. Armored car lost, but a light anti-tank half-track is ready, but the armored car is in flames. It is a bonfire now, and the light anti-tank half-track seems to be hitting it as well. Not having much luck here, and for some reason Sacredmesa is just letting it being shot at. Panzer Grenadiers charging forwards, but I'm not entirely sure what they're hoping to achieve. More troops are moving in, more airborne in fact. Still floating quite a lot of manpower. He could be calling in anti-tank guns, for example, to support against that light anti-tank half-track. Does not seem to be a prerogative of his. And now tank busters are getting ready. Panzerjägern. I suppose it will be Panzerstörern. Airborne holding the line as the Panzer Grenadiers charging ahead. Assault rifles blazing the last charge of the 17th SS, I predict. Airborne doing their best. Light anti-tank half-track rather exposed. Armor cars supporting slightly. Grenade going off, killing more Panzer Grenadiers. Tank busters charging forwards. And there we go, Zamroth rather realizing that he might end up in a very bad place, quickly scurries away and surrenders to Sacredmesa. So there you go, a Monday novice fight. What can we learn from this? Well, we saw some rather good movement from Mr. Zamroth in the beginning, but his main problem was he gained an advantage, but he didn't exploit it. That allowed Sacredmesa to return with a vengeance that really shattered his forces. And then Zamroth compounded it with one of the major sins, of course, poor unit preservation. Throwing away units out in the open, charging across, not thinking about throwing away troops, and of course granting quite a bit of veterancy to Sacredmesa's troops. That was very, very, very bad. Incredibly bad, in fact. Not good, and of course he was very, very late in securing a doctrine himself. Very bad. On the other hand, Sacredmesa had a good idea, of course. He could have chosen out a bit more slightly broader front, and perhaps attacking perhaps also from here. You know, there's a path that allows that. He could perhaps have gotten some smoke so he could have charged ahead. I mean, we have one game that really showed brilliant usage of smoke, but sadly it didn't quite appear from here. But there you go. Otherwise, good usage from Sacredmesa, though in attacking from numerous points, he didn't just sit about and sort of attack from the one continue, although he did do somewhat, but still more fronts. Good. And we did see some good aggression from Mr. Zamroth in the game, but at the same time he didn't really play to his strengths, and that rather than bit him in the ass and ended the game. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this fight. If you did, why not subscribe or tell your friends, and if you didn't, well, why not send in a replay of your own. This is Imperial Dane saying cheers.